President Donald Trump's ultimatum to end the war in Ukraine is set to expire in less than a week now, and we are already in a superpower showdown. In the latest, Trump has moved 2 nuclear submarines to the waters close to Russia. Trump's ultimatum to Putin to end the war in Ukraine is set to expire on 8th of August. If Russia does not stop its offensive in Ukraine by then, the president says he has threatened to impose harsh economic sanctions. But the posturing is now going beyond the diplomatic and the economic realm. With the U.S. moving its nuclear submarines close to Russia, nuclear prowess has now come into play. Trump's maximum pressure and peace through strength tactic is facing a sharp pushback from Moscow. As soon as the deadline was announced, a full-blown social media spat broke out between U.S. President and former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. Medvedev accused the U.S. of taking a step towards war. In a post on X, Russia's former president and Putin's close confidant warned Trump. Playing the nuclear card, he reminded Trump of Russia's nuclear capabilities, including the Dead Hand system, which was developed during the Cold War era. Trump was quick to respond. He said, if you talk nuclear, you need to be prepared. The United States is prepared.
Well, you just have to read what he said. He was talking about nuclear. When you talk about nuclear, we have to be prepared, and we're totally prepared.
Let's now look at how Russia and the United States compare to each other when it comes to nuclear firepower underwater. The nuclear submarines float in the undisclosed waters, but US and Russia are very close when it comes to underwater nuclear might. The US military operates a total of 71 nuclear submarines, while Russia is close behind with 64. But in overall naval prowess, US maintains a huge lead. When it comes to aircraft carriers, Russia has only 1, while United States operates 11 aircraft carriers. When it comes to destroyers, the story remains the same. Russia has 10 destroyers, while United States has 81 destroyers at its disposal. Despite this huge gap in the possession of naval assets, the position and potency is something that plays a crucial part. The United States military, including the Navy, has a vast global presence with over 750 bases in at least 80 countries. On the other hand, Russia has only a handful number of naval bases located abroad. Russia's nuclear-powered submarine K-329 Belgorod carries Poseidon, which is a nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed AUV designed to create a radioactive tsunami near coastal targets. 3M-22 Zyklon is a hypersonic anti-ship cruise missile which is capable of traveling at Mach 9 and potentially carrying a nuclear warhead. The Russia-US naval showdown goes beyond numbers. With position, power, potency and timing at play, it's hard to predict a clear winner in this potential superpower face-off. Mr. Peter Kuznick is a professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. He's now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Professor, good to see you and thank you very much for your time. Recent actions by the United States and Russia, including the reposition of U.S. nuclear submarines, indicates escalating tensions in marine power dynamics. If an ocean war was to erupt, who would have the edge between Russia and the United States?
If a war at sea erupts, there'll be no winners. There'll only be losers. While the U.S. has an edge in terms of, as you said, naval bases around the world and the number of ships and the tonnage of ships, Russia has other advantages. Russia has a great advantage in the number of corvettes. Russia has been developing new technologies. The Zircon hypersonic missiles are very, very potent. Russia is also working on underwater nuclear drones. So there's not going to be any winner. If a war does break out and it turns to a nuclear war, as is very, very likely, then the future existence of life on this planet will be threatened.
Professor Kuznick, despite the inflammatory statements by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, was it necessary for President Trump to reposition the submarines, and could there be consequences following Trump's move?
It just takes us closer to nuclear war. You know, there is already a serious threat, both in the Pacific, around China and Taiwan and the South China Seas, There was the fighting between India and Pakistan recently, the fighting around in Ukraine. The world is just going the wrong direction. Instead of solving issues, resolving things diplomatically, there's a greater and greater reliance on military means right now, which is totally irrational. But what Trump is doing is very worrisome because he's playing a game of nuclear chicken at a time when Trump is unraveling psychologically. We saw what happened first with his trade wars against not only India, but the rest of the world, followed by his response to the bad economic news, the fact that the United States has the worst jobs report over a 3-month period since 2010, and then Trump firing the messenger, firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics for delivering the bad news that was not manipulated, then his lying about it, and then his deploying nuclear subs toward Russia. You know, this is a man who's in the process of a meltdown. And for the man in the process of a meltdown to have access to the nuclear codes is terrifying. You have to remember that there's nobody in between Trump and the deployment of nuclear weapons. So do we know how rational Trump is? We know he's volatile. We know he's explosive. And we know that his past behavior is one of rash and impulsive behavior. In the nuclear age, you can't risk having a man with that kind of limited and explosive mentality in charge of nuclear weapons. Plus the fact that he's a pathological narcissist, which means that he doesn't really care what happens to other people. So I'm very worried right now.
Okay. Professor Kuznick, we'll have to end it there. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.